The sun rises slowly over a medieval town. Narrow stone streets stretch between tightly packed wooden houses. Smoke drifts from chimneys. The sound of horses, vendors, and distant church bells fills the air. Life is waking up, but the air itself is thick, heavy, and sour. Beneath beautiful robes and crowns, beneath armor and silk, beneath layers of fabric and belief, lies a secret that history rarely speaks about openly. In the medieval world, staying clean was one of the strangest, most confusing, and often dangerous battles of everyday life. Today, we turn a knob and clean water pours instantly into our hands. Soap waits beside every sink. Showers are routine. Cleanliness is simple. But for medieval people, water could be a threat, soap could be poison, and the very act meant to protect the body could invite death. This is the story of how medieval people tried to stay clean and how much of what they believed was tragically wrong. In the early centuries of the Middle Ages, the world still remembered Rome. The Romans had loved baths. They built grand public bathhouses, massive stone structures filled with hot pools, steam rooms, cold plunges, and massage chambers. These were not just places to wash. They were places to socialize, to talk, to rest, to relax after long days of labor and politics. When the Roman Empire fell, many of those bathhouses didn't vanish overnight. In many regions, people continued to use them. Towns still gathered to bathe together. Rivers still shimmered with swimmers. Wooden tubs still stood in homes where families washed one after another using the same warm water. In those early medieval years, bathing was normal. But slowly, quietly, fear crept in. No one in the Middle Ages understood bacteria. They had no microscopes, no germ theory, no knowledge that invisible organisms caused disease. Instead, they believed sickness traveled through bad air, known as miasma. If something smelled foul, it was dangerous. If the air was thick, it carried death. Then came the great disasters. Plagues swept across Europe again and again. Entire villages vanished. Families disappeared in weeks. Bodies filled the streets, and people searched desperately for a reason. Doctors reached a terrifying conclusion. They claimed that water opened the pores of the skin, and when pores opened, deadly air could slip directly inside the body. A warm bath, they warned, could invite disease straight into a person's bloodstream. And just like that, the same water that once symbolized freshness became something to fear. Bathtubs disappeared from many homes. Public bathhouses closed their doors. Parents warned children not to touch water too often. People stopped washing not because they liked dirt, but because they truly believed water could kill them. If water was forbidden, people still needed another way to feel clean. And so a strange belief took hold. Dirt and illness lived in fabric, not on skin. People became obsessed with fresh clothes. The wealthy changed their undergarments daily. Linen shirts were prized not for beauty, but for protection. They believed that sweat and sickness were drawn out of the body and trapped inside fabric. By changing clothes, they believed they were purifying themselves. Royalty sometimes went months or even years without proper bathing, yet still considered themselves extremely clean because their garments were fresh. Beneath layers of silk and velvet, Skin grew stiff with oil and grime. But as long as the shirt was white, everything felt safe. In the medieval world, smell was not just unpleasant. Smell was dangerous. People believed that disease traveled through odor. If something stank, death followed. If something smelled sweet, it offered protection. So they fought disease with scent. Perfume wasn't luxury, it was armor. Men and women carried scented cloths, pouches of crushed flowers, lavender bundles, spiced oils, rosewater. Doctors wore beaked masks filled with arbs to filter deadly smells from the air. Wealthy women soaked their gloves in perfume. Even poor workers rubbed arbs into their hair. But scent did not remove dirt. It only covered it. The medieval world often smelled like flowers layered over decay. Since water was feared, people turned to dry cleaning the body. They used powdered chalk ground herbs, crushed minerals, white cosmetic dust. These powders were rubbed into skin to absorb oil and sweat. They believed this removed harmful moisture from the body. The result? Skin slowly dried and cracked. Dirt gathered beneath layers of powder. Faces turned pale and stiff. What looked clean was often just painted over. By the late Middle Ages, public bathhouses gained a dark reputation. They were no longer only places for washing. They became social clubs, drinking halls, massage chambers, and sometimes hidden houses of temptation. The church declared them sinful. Being naked among others was considered immoral. Pleasure itself became suspicious, and so bath after bath was shut down across Europe. Cleanliness began to feel like a moral danger. Soap did exist, but it was nothing like the gentle bars we use today. Medieval soap was made by boiling. Animal fat, wood ash, harsh alkaline substances. The result was a powerful chemical paste that burned skin, stripped oils aggressively, and left behind a sharp odor. It was mostly used by cloth makers, wool workers, surgeons, and occasionally the wealthy. For everyday people, soap was too expensive, too harsh, and too dangerous for frequent use. Washing your body could feel like rubbing fire onto your skin. Hair was washed rarely. Instead, people scraped dirt with combs, rubbed powders into the scalp, applied oils mixed with herbs. Some believed that hair should become stiff with dirt because softness was seen as weakness. Others shaved their heads entirely to avoid lice and smell. Lice, fleas, and insects were constant companions. Children scratched endlessly. Adults accepted it as normal. Toothbrushes did not exist. Medieval people cleaned their teeth using chewing sticks, cloth strips, rough wooden twigs, powder made from crushed bones, ground shells, charcoal dust. These materials scraped plaque away, but also damaged enamel. Toothache was one of the most feared pains of the era. There were no painkillers, no anesthesia, only pulling. When someone did finally bathe, it was a rare event. Bathing was done on special occasions, before marriage, before childbirth, during serious illness. The bathwater was often shared by several family members. The first person bathed in clean water, the last bathed in murky, cold remains. Some people bathed only a few times in their entire life. Then came the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, nearly half of Europe's population died. The horror was indescribable. Cities collapsed, villages vanished, priests buried the dead until they died themselves. People became even more terrified of water. Bathing stopped almost entirely. Homes were sealed. Fresh air was avoided. Ironically, the very fear that was meant to protect people helped the plague spread faster. Kings and queens were not cleaner. In fact, sometimes they were worse. They wore layers upon layers of clothing that trapped heat, sweat, and dirt. Perfume became unbearable in strength. Some rulers washed only their hands and face while leaving the rest untouched. One famous queen reportedly bathed only twice in her life, once at birth and once before her wedding. Yet she was considered refined because dirt was invisible beneath silk. Homes were filled with smoke from open fires. Windows were tiny, allowing little airflow. Floors were often dirt or straw. Straw was changed rarely. Waste was thrown outside into the street. Cleanliness meant sweeping visible dirt. Throwing herbs on the floor for smell, hanging scented plants on doors, the air grew thick with smoke, rot, and perfume. Doctors often discouraged washing wounds. They believed water weakened the body. Instead, wounds were treated with oils, animal fat, wine, honey, herbal pastes. Some of these helped. Many infected the wound further. Surgery was done without proper cleaning. Instruments were reused without washing. Infection was common. Death was expected. From our modern viewpoint, medieval hygiene seems irrational, but they were not foolish. They were trapped between limited science, powerful religion, constant disease, and overwhelming fear. They saw people bathe and die afterward from illness they already carried without knowing it. To them, water seemed responsible. They smelled rotten. Death followed. To them, smell became the enemy. Without microscopes, germs were invisible villains. So they fought what they could sense: air, water, odor. By the Renaissance, ideas began to change. Doctors started questioning ancient teachings. Private bathing slowly returned. Soap improved. Ventilation increased. But it would take hundreds of years, including devastating epidemics, before humanity truly understood what cleanliness meant. Medieval people wanted the same thing we want today: to feel safe, to protect their families, to live without fear of sickness. Their methods were strange because their knowledge was limited. Their world was dark not because of ignorance alone, but because no one had yet discovered the invisible war being fought inside the human body. Today, every shower you take is a victory they never had. Every bar of soap is a miracle they couldn't imagine. And every clean breath you take is a reminder of how far humanity traveled from perfume-covered decay to invisible microbial understanding. The medieval world was not simply dirty. It was a world trying desperately to survive with the wrong map.